Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the October 18th, 2022 work session of the Methacton Board of School Directors. Please rise for the pledge. Thank you. The public is hereby advised of the audio and video recording of this meeting for the purposes of rebroadcasting. There is an executive session announcement. There was an executive session of the board held on October 5th, 2022 virtually for the purposes of discussing the amendment to the collective bargaining agreement with the MEA. By way of attendance, all school board directors are in attendance with the exception of Mr. Young. And now it's time for recognition of guest and scheduled speakers. Dr. Zerbe.
Thank you, Madam President. I will go to the podium. I have a couple presentations listed on the agenda this evening. Good evening. There are a number of presentations scheduled for this evening. The first one is the Audubon Elementary School update. School board members, you have at your table the presentation from August that I had presented. Does it sound okay? Okay. And then you additionally have another subset of that slideshow with one additional slide. So with that said, I'm going to share some information with you, and then I'll reference that slide presentation. So as per my presentation on the 23rd of August, I shared that my recommendation is to make a determination regarding the Audubon Elementary School property. Just a brief history, we closed the school in 2017, has a cost approximately $200,000 per year annually, currently used for district storage and meeting space. We were approached by Lower Providence Township prior to the pandemic with the concept of turning part of the building with the help of private investors into a community center. The pandemic placed that concept on hold, and it was recently revisited among both parties and has not materialized beyond concept to a commitment. As such, in August, I presented two paths forward: selling the property or keeping the property. If we determine to sell the property, we will pull the solicitor into the conversation and to provide recommendations on the different avenues and ways for which we can sell the property. If we choose to keep the property, I presented 8 options for how we can erase or limit the annual expense while working with the township and other potential private investors to provide a community resource service and keep the property from potential future district use. I presented that the student enrollment forecast suggests that enrollment in the next 10 years is not likely to present a need to construct a school on this property. However, the determination to sell this asset for a one-time gain is not a recommendation that I can make. The business decision here is much greater than that of the current value or use or non-use of the property. With that stated, before we take comments and questions, because generally tonight is more along the lines of an opportunity for us as board members to have questions, to talk about what's been previously presented, and to synthesize thoughts so that when we get to November, we have an opportunity to take action and knowing that we have all the information available to us. So, but before we do that and we take comments, I want to also say that there was another item that came before me to help reduce the annual expense and also keep the building keep the property to be used. So this is an opportunity to I would say develop or even direct me as superintendent to potentially take a step in November to say, let's keep the property, level the building, and direct the superintendent to develop other educational or school-related opportunities. So just just so I'm clear, we can decide in November to sell the property in a number of different ways. We can decide to use one of the options that I previously provided, or we can stop and say, okay, let's take this in a phased approach by saying, okay, right now, temporarily for a period of time, could be a number of years, but not in perpetuity, where we say we level the property and then we direct the superintendent to provide, a future, recommendations on how we can use that. In all fairness, we've been consumed with the concept with the township for quite some time in trying to make this community center project come to become a reality. So there wasn't a lot of work on behalf of my administration and myself to bring you other educational alternatives. However, tonight I have one that I can certainly share with you, and you might think that it's deserving of additional consideration. So with that said, there's the original handout from August that is just there for your information. And then the new one is just in the big, I'll call it the big pullout, has, and is what I'm going to show up on the screen, is really the new information from October 18th. So as you can see, the original photo here is the aerial view of the Audubon property. We saw this rendering from KCBA in the August presentation. We certainly know that there's some dry creek bed which prevents any development on that particular area. We also know that in concept, we were able to say that you could keep part of the building, which would be considered some of the old part of the building and the gymnasium, while creating a path around the property, keeping tennis courts, basketball courts, playground, and being able to keep a spot on that property for a school to be built in the future. But let's just imagine for a second that there's another way to get some school related use out of that. And what if we were able to do something like this, to put a 6-lane track and a multi-purpose turf field in there? Sounds like a very interesting concept, but there's no secret that the Arcola track and cross country team, with well over 100 students participating, currently run around the Arcola Skyview campus. This simple disadvantage and challenge is surely representative and warrants a consideration to a concept like this, if they would have access to a track or access to an area for better participation. Furthermore, it's no secret that the fields at Arcola and Skyview are not in good condition. There's been a number of discussions over the years in the property committee meetings of how, after we were to complete the renovations at the high school, we were going to consider, what renovations we could do at the Arcola Skyview campus. Well, some of the challenges with making renovations at the Skyview Arcola campus include the way is the topography, which means that it's hard to build on an area that we can't flatten out to make the dimensions of these fields the proper dimensions for PIAA play. So all of our fields are not only ripe with challenge and associated with stones and less topsoil than we would want, but also the dimensions of those fields are less than adequate to support the programs. So imagine that a multi-purpose field that would take the ability to do a lot of different sports, to offshoot some of the scheduling challenges, to be able to provide a practice and playing surface for all of our Arcola sports, while at the same time being an opportunity for members of the community not only to walk around the walking path, but also to use the track for their enjoyment, and the fields for youth athletics for their enjoyment. So again, this is just another example of what could be done. And it's one of those things that if given enough time, And again, time unfortunately equates to some money in terms of the cost of keeping the building on the property. We could provide some other alternative of options for consideration. But at this time, if we were going to make a decision in November, and November happens to be our drop dead date, because by doing that, if we were to sell it, or if we were to say we could keep it and we're going to level it, we could know reasonably well that we wouldn't be putting that $200,000 into the annual operating budget. And that's the issue of time with this conversation here and the potential decision that you have before you in November. So with that said, let's open the floor to some questions. I'll try my best to provide those answers for you, and hopefully we can be more informed to making a better decision, or the best decision possible, in November. Questions? Ms. Reese?
One is from the property meeting. It was one I had asked, and you may not know the answer fully yet, but I was asking about the opportunities at Woodland. How much more can be added there? And if you don't have the answer yet, that's fine.
Yeah, we know that the building was constructed so that there could be other additions added on to it. But
Okay.
I don't know to what degree, how many more classrooms, all of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know a few of us aren't we're still that's why we're waiting till November, but a few of us aren't 100%. And then with this latest idea, that still, and excuse me if you said this and I missed it, that still involves demolishing the building.
This current drawing here would. So there would be a parking lot in part of the place, and the field may not necessarily run in that particular area. It actually may run lengthwise, or does that make sense? It may not look exactly like that, but there is space on that property for a field or a field and a track.
So it's the cost of the field, the track, and demolishing the building.
Right. So we said between $500,000 to $600,000 to demolish the building. I would say a field, and just, we're at least looking at $1 million plus.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Perdue?
Do you know if with this consideration, did you have any, I'm guessing you haven't had any discussions with the township also, just because we're considering using it just for a track? Have they and I'm asking that question because a part of your proposal is to have it for community use. So I'm wondering if this opened up any further discussions with the township, or is that off the table completely?
No, I think from my conversations with the township, they are prepared to do something with us. They just are not committed at this time to doing a community center that involves the building. I think they're still trying to work through that. They haven't given me their final determination, but I know that their big debate is whether or not they want to make an investment in a community center and open that conversation back up with us about the utilization of some or all of the existing structure. I believe the concept behind having a walking path and having a community park is certainly something that I believe they would be welcome to assist with us. But again, I don't think from either entity, the township or the district, that we would be using our own funds to get to that place. We would work collaboratively to look for local, state, federal funds in terms of grants to try to get to these, community, make this into this community asset. So if it were to happen, it's not like something would happen, overnight. We decided to keep the property, level the building. The building could theoretically, or the property could theoretically sit for a number of years before any further development occurs on it. So, I mean, I don't have a timeline to say this is how it will happen. I can only tell you that in my conversations with the township, I told them that I would be recommending to this board that we should keep the property and level the building, so that they need to make a decision before November, at the very least, to say, are they in need of the building and what kind of commitment can they make if they want the building? Because once the building's leveled, I'm certain that if they came to us with a great idea to do something collaborative with us, if we had the land, no longer the building, we would be interested in at least having that conversation. The challenge is if they want a building by demolishing it, or they want that specific building because they believe there's some value in that structure, once it's gone, it certainly can't be, put back on the table for conversation. And if you recall, one of the other things that we talked about the last time in August was that this property could technically be subdivided in a way that would allow the township to, do something beneficial to for the township, at the same time making it available for future use by the school district. So it doesn't need to necessarily be where the building was. It could be a different part of the property, but if it has a value for the community, and we believe that makes sense, we can certainly do a subdivision of that. It would be contingent upon that particular piece of the property being used by the township for the good of the community. Once they stopped using it for that, the property, that part of the property that was subdivided, would revert back to the school district. That's how that works under the code.
And just a follow-up question, at the property and transportation meeting, did, I guess, a discussion come up, or a point of discussion about transportation if we're proposing it for Skyview Arcola usage?
Well, certainly, we would want to make sure that we can transport our students, athletes down to the property. But in speaking with Mr. Bricker, certainly, we would make the arrangements to make that happen. I mean, some of it, just for reference, some of our teams actually compete off campus now. They just use these fields for practice. So the value here is it's just down the hill. It would be an all-weather opportunity for them, and certainly it's something that puts them in a I would say in a different league in terms of their ability to practice and then compete at that level, and to be prepared for competition on turf fields and in a real track, when they reach high school. Ms. Cancro?
I guess overall, my comments are, I think we're overcomplicating the situation with all these different scenarios. We closed the school in 2018, I think, correct? Is that
2017, yeah.
so? We're looking at over 5 years that we've paid. So it's over $1 million that we've already put into this building. We already approached the Lower Providence with an agreement if they wanted to utilize the building. We had the lawyers pull up that agreement to say that all costs would be dependent on them to take care of if they wanted to do a community center. We met with them on many occasions throughout the years, and it's not in their plan, in their 10-year plan. And I don't want to misspeak for them, but the building is not, in my opinion, we're not here in the business of historical preservation. And I do feel like we have to be mindful of where our taxpayer money is going. So in my opinion, I think we level it and hold that building so that we can use it for educational opportunity, because I do agree, the Arcola Skyview campus, the football field is not the right length. The track kids are not running, they're running around the building. You've got the soccer fields full of rocks. So even through the facilities for our 10-year facilities plan, our fields were not up to par in that campus. And that is 4 grades in that. So they could really utilize this. So I think that I would be for leveling it and maintaining the land. And then when we are prepared to look at it at a later date. So that's just my thoughts.
Ms. Rocco?
Yeah, just a follow up to what Ms. Reese asked earlier, but not specific to Woodland, but if before November we can get the information, not just for Woodland, but I think there was also the way Arrowhead is built, there's still opportunity, and just capacity, just even capacity of the buildings, where we are, and taking a look at the report from, that we received from Flow, analytics the other week. So I just would like to know what the elementary schools, all of them, have as far as expansion and or in building capacity before we would make this decision. Because I'm still hesitating a little with holding on to the property. And I know I said this at finance the other night, but holding on to something for a what if. Yes, it's a good point that the fields here aren't up to par. And if we use that down the road, I just don't think we're in a position to look at that anytime soon because of, other priorities. However, I think that if we're holding it for something like that down the road, still there is the maintenance that comes with that. And then there is the leveling cost. So, I'm still not certain that we shouldn't sell this property. So I'd like that information.
We can certainly get that for you.
Thanks.
Mr. Winters?
Yeah, I mean, at the property and finance expressed the same opinion. I just working my way backwards. I definitely could support, much like was just said with the prior board members, but support the use of the property for MSD, Methacton, a community center that uses schools tax dollars for a pavilion or things that could be used by the district is not something I can support straight up. Certainly it would be primarily a Lower Providence beneficiary. So I appreciate that there's a new idea out there. So I do like that. I don't know if there's North Montrose has some long-term vision of possibly needing a satellite campus for a biometal area or some of the programs they want to expand in. I don't know how convenient that is. Maybe it's a pipe dream, but is the IU interested in that property? At one point, they were looking at looked at the Audubon School, is my understanding, before they redid Main Street. So those type of things, any type of public educational benefit that we can come up with from a perspective of long-term use, I'm very supportive. Going through that building for so many times, and most recently you took us through a few months ago, demolishing is an easy decision for me, despite the sentimental value to the school, to the area. I understand that, but the property itself is not to the point of repair, I think, at this point, or functionality. So that gets me to the more easy, or I should say the first decision, not the easy one, but the sell or keep. I'm understanding the principle of keep, not from a perspective of long-term use for a school, but the possible additional needs that we may have in the district, or if it could be used for public education. But I'm still not 100% there to the keep sell decision. So
Thank you for that feedback. Any other comments? Ms. Drummond?
Yeah, just if it's the decision sell or keep, I do definitely think we should keep it to just, in case of the zoning would allow entities to come in that would be detrimental to our school district, such as charter schools. And in terms of the property, it sounds like I'm apparently in the property. I do think there's historical, something to preserve there historically. And, I think it would be nice once it's gone, it's gone. And, there is some architectural attributes to that building. So I would like to look at saving that core 1920s part, but it sounds like I'm in the minority, but I think we should definitely keep the property.
Thank you. And just to clarify, in one of the options, we did lay out what the expense is estimated to be to keep that one part. So if we were to keep it, I think it's option 3 or something like that in the original August presentation. Mr. Rookstool?
Yeah, I might have just missed what you said there. But, so you said it was 500 to 600,000 would be the cost to level the building?
I believe that's what it says in the options that I provided.
And what's the yearly maintenance once the building's leveled?
I mean, to cut the grass, I mean, where's my, I don't know where my
So
business
minimal?
manager is. Do you have any idea? I mean,
I'm up here tonight.
It's minor.
It would be
Minor.
minor. The insurance would be dropped to vacant property. So we'd lose any responsibility with regards to the building and the contents. And then the only other upkeep would be snow removal and or grass cutting if you put parking lots. And if you level that stuff, then it's just grass cutting.
Okay.
And I don't have,
Yeah, no,
I
was-
don't want to give you a number like it's $10,000.
That's fine.
I just don't know.
And I said this at finance, and I agree with what's been said by some of the other board members. I'm in favor of, keeping it to see if we can find some educational benefit either for the district or for public education. So that idea of the phased approach, kind of, leveling the building and then making that decision on what to do with it. What's a realistic timeline though for that next phase, or to come up with all of those things where we would then, I just don't want to kick it down the road and just, say level the building and then have another year where we decide, where we just have a vacant lot. We don't have any decisions on what we want to do with it. So what's realistic in your mind for putting together a couple of different proposals and where we could then move forward on that?
I don't see why it could, before the start of next school year, that it'd be leveled. I mean, there should, I mean, it's not like we're looking for material, it's a matter of vehicles, abatement and some labor, but we're not, we're not in the supply chain challenge with getting materials. There's no reason that after a vote in November, if in fact we decide to keep the building or keep the property and level the building, that we don't put that out for bid. Probably within 3 to 4 weeks, have a response. I would say by January, February, approve a vendor to do the work and have it started whenever it seems reasonably ready to do that.
Thanks.
But the goal, I think the goal of making any decision in November really needs to be the limit or to remove the $200,000 a year. I mean, that's where we started from in terms of this, decision-making process. And like you said, Mr. Ruxel, I think, while we didn't look at it this way originally, a phased-in approach might be the best way to give us the proper time to come up with some other alternatives. Again, this was done. I think Ms. Cancro might have said something, probably 3-4 months ago about it being used for fields, and it wasn't just until this afternoon that I got all the information that I needed that we actually can fit. And likely we can't fit the field and stuff in that way, the way the drawing is. It would actually go long ways, but it would be able to fit, and it could be an opportunity where there's restrooms, the field, the track, all those types of things that, not only are available for our students in the district, but can be available after hours and weekends for our community. So it wouldn't be something that we would gate off and lock up. So it would be different than how we treat the current high school campus. And we treat the high school campus in a way that allows us to preserve access and the use a lot longer by keeping challenges associated with unmonitored space. So with that said, are there comments, questions, Ms. Purdue?
Is it possible to, for November, to have the projected, I guess, yearly cost with the leveling? If we proceed to level it out? I think you said we don't have that number, right? Is it possible to have that or no?
The leveling and the
Well, not the cost to level, but to maintain the annual cost to maintain
okay.
it.
Yeah, we can get someone to project the grass cutting maintenance costs. Are there other pieces of data information that I can help you with? One thing that I will be doing between now and our date in November is getting having that conversation kind of finalized with the township to ensure that I know they're talking about it, so I want them to be able to have the last opportunity to say what they need to say in order to proceed forward. If there's nothing else on this matter, I will get that information.
I just have one
sure.
thought, just to maybe I just would hate to, because we know the community feels a lot of passion for schools and buildings, and I think we should put on our website a pop-up just saying that we're thinking about this, because if the decision is to level the building, and I would hate the public to become aware of this when they see the wrecking ball there. So I just think we should just make a, effort to advertise this to the public.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. So I think the best thing for us to do is, if unless the board sees otherwise, I would make the recommendation tonight to place for public notice that the agenda for November, whatever the meeting date is, would be the recommendation of keeping the property and leveling the building. And from there, certainly the board does not have to approve that agenda item. But certainly that's the one you would vote on, and then you could also, amend the motion, or you could, have an alternative motion if necessary. But that way, it gives that notice that I think you're trying to provide, and it allows, the dialogue from within our community to, inform us possibly in a number of different ways.
Yeah, because honestly, I haven't heard anything from anybody,
Sure.
but that doesn't mean, I don't know what the feeling is.
No,
So
that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I think similar to your perspective, there are a number of other individuals within our community that see value in a part of that property, especially the building. And I think it's only reasonable to do that. So we will do that sometime this week if there's no objection for me moving forward with that. Seeing no objection, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, is the amendment to the collective bargaining agreement. Can I have the presentation posted to the screen, please? This evening, I will be sharing the rationale for and the major amendments to the collective bargaining agreement between the Methacton School District and the Methacton Education Association. This amendment is unique to Methacton's collective bargaining history. It is a result of a truly collaborative effort among the board, the administration, and the association, and in my opinion, is an important proactive measure by this board to best position our district for the future and affirms their commitment to public education and this community. The voting agenda on Tuesday, October 25th, the motion will read as follows. Approve the amendment to the collective bargaining agreement between the Methacton School District and the Methacton Education Association dated July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2024, and to further extend the collective bargaining agreement through June 30th, 2026 in accordance with the attached presentation. Tonight's presentation will be attached to the board presentation area starting tomorrow morning, and it'll also be attached to this agenda when the agenda goes live at 7 o'clock on Saturday. A great deal has changed within the labor market. While Methacton, like other districts across the Commonwealth, began seeing labor supply issues prior to the pandemic, specifically with the availability of teacher substitutes, it pales in comparison to the challenges we faced during the pandemic and in the most recent hiring season. The challenges for all of us across the Commonwealth have moved from challenges with getting substitutes to challenges with filling full-time teaching positions. This past summer was one of the most challenging hiring seasons that I can recall. In its most simple form, the days of 80 to 100 applicants for each teacher position are gone. The decline in students going to college for teaching and completing a program has declined by 53% in the last 10 years, with the number of certificates issued in a given year falling from 15,000 a decade ago to 5,440 in 2021. This trend is not changing sharply anytime soon. The supply and demand challenge will be prominent for the foreseeable future. The market is simply dictating the need for us to modify our approach to our operation. We can either sit back and navigate the resulting challenges or take action to best position the district today and into the future. I say we do the latter. I recommend that we take action as outlined as part of our strategic plan and within this presentation. The goal of this amendment was to target the starting teacher salary of $60,000 within 3 years and to close the $7,000 to $10,000 lower salary disparity gap we have with starting and tenured positions. The targets were based on salary schedules from neighboring districts. We did not factor in districts like Lower Merion, who traditionally have some of the highest salary rates in the Commonwealth, or districts that have similar or lower salary rates. Taking action to amend the collective bargaining agreement now, as opposed to waiting for the usual collective bargaining cycle to start in January of 2024, is a good proactive measure by the board to not only address attracting new hires, but to increase the pool of candidates applying, at the same time limiting talent poaching. Waiting until January 2024 does nothing to address our current challenges, and the recent collective bargaining history has not been favorable to the district and our school community. Taking this action is critical to placing us in a competitive position today and into the future, but it is not the only actions we need to take. Simply see our strategic plan for other outlined strategies. Also, this action is not going to be the final solution to the labor supply challenge. There is work on the national, state, and local levels that are needed to get us as a state, as a nation, to a better, more consistent labor market position to properly support and deliver high-quality public education. In terms of poaching, we have seen in the last 2 years, 10 tenured Methacton teachers leave for similar positions elsewhere for an average of $10,033 each, requiring us to fill positions from a starting position of $7,000 to $10,000 lower than our neighbors in a market of shrinking labor supply. The districts that poach from our staff include the MCIU, Upper Merion, Downingtown, Lower Merion, Twin Valley, Easton, Tredyffrin, Springfield Township, and Colonial. So what we are seeing is other high-quality districts like Methacton that have salary schedules with step movement stealing our talent, requiring us to be reactive. This collective bargaining amendment will help curb this trend and allow us to better retain our staff. More examples of some of the challenge. In the recent hiring season, we had 15 teachers turn down our offer of employment due to low compensation. Yes, 15. In our last bargaining session, we were able to institute early notification of retirement to better allow us to get a jump start on hiring. And that happened. We did this to then only witness 4 of our new hires leave or get hired in May and then leave us in the summer for higher pay. Fundamentally, we must keep the concept, this particular concept, at the forefront of this action. It is important to consider that our property values are directly tied to the quality of education, and the quality of a child's education is directly correlated to the quality of a teacher. Therefore, placing us in the best position to be competitive for the ever-shrinking labor pool is critical to our future. We're on slide 7, and in this one, so when we look at the competitive attractiveness, we generally think of several things to help attract the talent. We commonly include things like geography, climate, rankings, but wages and benefits take the precedent over all of these. And now including looking at the overall earning potential of a career. The ability for a school district to be competitive and attract talent is directly tied to our ability to afford the personnel cost. This ability to afford personnel costs of competitive wages and benefits is tied to the way in which PA public schools are funded, and specifically related to that of the Act 1 index. The Act 1 index is a law used to determine the maximum tax increase the school district can levy annually. The index is calculated by averaging the percent increases in the Pennsylvania statewide average weekly wage and the federal employment cost index. A rise in the Act 1 index is an indicator that wages and cost of goods and services are increasing. Act 1 establishes the threshold that allows school districts' budgets to keep pace with those rising costs. Last year, the Act 1 index was 3.4%. This meant that wages and costs were increasing at a rate enough to warrant school districts like Methacton to increase taxes to cover these wage and cost increases by as much as 3.4% over the previous year's budget. With the work done by the Finance Committee of the board in conjunction with my administration, we were able to bring forward a budget with a modest increase of 1.2%. While this may be viewed as a positive from one perspective, it is relative to the salary and benefits paid to our staff. That being said, the $7,000 to $10,000 lower on average salary as compared to some of our neighboring neighbors allows us to keep our tax increases well under the Act 1 index on a more regular basis. The chart shows that the last 5 years, we have cumulatively been 6.4% lower than the Act 1 index during that same time. Now, in order to position ourselves in this new marketplace and to address our competitive attractiveness through providing a more competitive wage and benefits, we most likely need to increase taxes over time to pay for this. In summary, the amendment reads as follows. The amendment will be placed on the voting agenda for Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. It includes the existing and 2 additional years ending June 30th of 2026. It includes language modifications that Mr. Regina will share with you a little later in this presentation that increases the administrative flexibility in managing the operation of the schools. It includes 1 additional workday. It includes employee healthcare premium contributions as listed there by year, with the current year being 19%. And it includes average salary increases as listed within the years on this chart. The average salary increases are necessary in order to reach our targeted starting salary of $60,000 per year. In terms of slide 9, we look at the year 1 of the agreement. We will use the following funds to address increases in the current year. As a reminder, the state subsidy was issued following the passage of our district budget, with the other line items identified will be finalized closer to the end of the school year. In all, the cost for year 1 will be $1.5 million. For slide 10, year 2, it has an estimated cost of about $3.9 million and will likely require a tax increase of somewhere between 2.79% and 3%. This is the year that fixes a schedule to place us on the competitive path forward. In terms of slide 11, for years 3 and 4, we see modest increments of 1.8 to 2.1 million respectively, with teachers moving each year a whole step on the salary schedule. And this is something that hasn't happened in quite some time. And this can change with, these numbers can change with the number of people and the educational attainment levels, but these numbers are provided to represent what this contract amendment means in terms of the commitment to become more competitive and the cost to do it. The next 2 slides, Mr. Regina.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. The first one is the middle school team structure. There's been some revisions to this in the language, eliminating some of the high school type language with the middle school team structure. That's going to limit some of the scheduling barriers that we have right now with teaming. The second item that we have is revisions to the team meeting period. Both the Arcola and Skyview schedule talks about team prep period. We eliminated that, so there's no confusion on what that means. The team meeting period is going to allow for more collaboration between our professional staff members, our administrators, and those involved to allow for data analysis and other curriculum matters to help for planning. The next language item that we looked at was the additional workday. So currently our staff goes to school for 190 workdays. We are going to be adding 191 workdays. The additional workday will be used as a self-directed day. It'll look like an in-service day, essentially. It will occur after our first 2 in-service days, but before the students come to school. It'll be used for a self-directed day. It'll allow teachers to be able to plan and prepare, but also take care of a number of their professional responsibilities before the school year starts. And last but not least is the coverage language. Coverage has been in some language that we have had some confusion with historically with the association, and we have clarified that language using the existing MOU that we have and also adding some language for some non-professional classroom staff to be utilized. As an example, counselors on a weekly basis to only be utilized them 2 times before there's any compensation. So thank you,
Mr. Regina. The timeline, October 17th, the association took this amendment and took it to a vote. It's my understanding that they approved the amendment. October 18th, today, we're presenting this to the board for their consideration. It'll be on the agenda for your vote on the 25th. And then the contract in terms of salary goes into effect beginning December 1st, with the first pay hitting the teachers on December 15th. With all of this shared here this evening, it's clearly a proactive measure by the Methacton Board of School Directors to better provide an opportunity for us across not only our starting positions, but our spectrum of existing positions and experience. It helps limit the poaching of seasoned talent. It provides additional administrative flexibility in managing the resources of the district. It certainly affirms the board's commitment to the community and to public education. And this is placing us in a better position for the future of Methacton schools. So with that, I'll take questions from members of the board. Ms. Drummond?
I have a question, or just a clarification in paying for this contract. My understanding is that the increased level of funding that we're seeing now from the Commonwealth that was in the most recent budget is helping to defray these costs, as well as the settled Shenandoah matter, where that money in the budget is no longer being put into escrow. Can you confirm that?
Yeah, so I think what you're referring to is with the court's determination of the Shenandoah matter, it allows for approximately about $800 and some odd $1,000 to now be used as part of the operating budget. And that for a good 15 years was not the case. So it gives us an opportunity to leverage those resources to ensure that we help put ourselves in the best position possible. And the other part that I believe you're referring to is after we passed our budget in June, the state passed their budget, and we had an additional $790,000 of additional subsidy provided to the school district. And under the hold harmless provision, we are guaranteed to get that on an annual basis. So that, there's about $1.6 million that's really there to help, defray the overall cost of this proposal. Other questions, comments from members of the board? Mr. Winters?
Yeah, just to clarify on slide 9 and 10, I think it might be a typo. The step should read a half a step. Is that correct?
Is that correct, Mr. Booker?
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just that before this goes out. I also want to thank you and Shay especially for taking this on with Tim. I think it's the right thing to do the district. I know that some will look at these numbers and go, holy cow, what are you doing? And they do stick out. And I honestly can say that when I looked at the numbers the first time, I said the same thing. But I believe what you laid out here in this presentation of the reasoning and understanding the supply and demand situation and the core of the educational experience here at the Acton is from the teachers. And if we don't have resources to provide the right education, I don't know what we're doing here. So if you look at these numbers and you're seeing it from the outside, you're going, what the heck are these guys doing? This is the right thing to do for the district for the long term. And I appreciate the leadership that you guys took in bringing this forward.
Thank you, Mr. Winters. The slide that speaks to all of this is is up on the screen right now. And the real challenge of this is, and I said this isn't changing anytime soon. In fact, the 5440 is going to be 4,000. Then it's going to be 3,000. My concern is I don't know how fast that'll happen. And that's the, and so when I say we can sit and wait, we could do that, but we're going to be really challenged in ways that are I don't know if that's the position that our community wants us in.
Yeah, no, and I'll just add one other comment. If you take the 5,000 over 500, I think we're at 500 exactly school districts in Pennsylvania, and you just that means every year we all get 10 is insane. That assumes it's equitable across the district. And the only thing that concerns me about this, we're doing the right thing with the Acton, but the thing for public education that's really scary is the ability. I think I saw something today about Philadelphia doesn't even have special education supervisors, and the special education experience in Philadelphia is going, it's got to be very difficult to try to manage. So it's only going to get worse. And we are doing something proactively because we can, but there's a lot of districts in public school that will not be able to. So I'm really worried from that perspective. But again, thank you.
No, thank you.
Just to
Hold
piggy.
on 1 second. I think we have a
And
clarification.
there is a half a step. That's a typo on my part.
Which year?
In the 23-24 year.
Okay, we're going to make that correction before we post this live. Okay. I'm sorry, Ms. Drummond, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate, or when Paul was speaking, that got me to thinking about how proud we are of our AP programs, our honors programs, and how concerned we get when we lose a teacher with a specific skill set, the languages or the sciences. And, we all discuss that at this table, our concerns about hiring another qualified teacher with those specific rare skills. And so I am really proud of this agreement, and that will help us not only retain, but attract teachers for our AP and our honors and the academic excellence that we do have here.
Well said, Ms. Drummond. Ms. Cancro?
I'm excited for this. I think when we receive the new funding from the state, it's supposed to go towards educational purpose, and our teachers are the core of our education. So immediately I thought, well, this money should go right to the teachers who are with our children, shaping our children for the future. So I am excited, and not to bring up, but the past history of the past three agreements we went through a strike. We've went through, arbitration, and the last one wasn't as easy either. And it's time that we give to these teachers that have been committed, and we keep them, and we get new staff when people want to retire. So I thank you for this. And I mean, the biggest thing is the Act 1 index. It's been the highest it's ever been for next year at a 4.1 for a reason, because that is where we are economically. So I think this is proactive on our part, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Well said. Thank you very much.
I just wanted
Ms.
to real
Reese?
quick piggyback on something Paul said. He thanked all of you, and I wanted to thank him as well, because I know, and other board members in the past who are involved in this, because it is very time consuming. And I know this is a little different, but thank you for that. And just to let everybody know, at our very first in-person IU meeting after COVID, our meetings aren't terribly, terribly, terribly long. And we spent a long time among the 21 Montgomery County school districts talking about this. And it is, to to add to what Paul said, we are lucky to be in this position. And lucky is not the right word. We are at an advantage to be in this position because no, not every district in Montgomery County is going to be hurting, but there's going to be a lot of districts hurting. And to Paul's point, it's scary. And to speak, I know people in the public like to make fun of me, but I'm going to say it anyway. To speak as an educator, I have 20 plus years. I still enjoy teaching. It has gotten challenging at times, just like every single position. And I do encourage anybody out there listening, it's a good job. It's a good career. You make a difference. And to Ms. Cancro's point, I'm glad we can help our teachers, but I would encourage people to consider it. There's math people, there's math and science people out there that we would love to have in the classroom. So I was just talking to Dr. Sergini before the meeting saying, oh, I know a recent, Methacton grad who's going to be graduating soon with a special education degree. And I forgot her exact graduation date. But anyway, I of course support this and thank everyone involved. And to piggyback on what Ms. Cancro said, I'm happy if this attracts teachers to our district and keeps some of our teachers here in the district and/or possibly working a little longer if they choose to do so.
Well, thank you for your comments, Ms. Reese. If I just may say that, when I mentioned that this is just one of several things that we ought to be doing, I know that we've had conversations with among some of our teachers, specifically at the high school. I know Mr. Regina is working on a project with Dr. Gravenese and some of those teachers to actually start as young as we possibly can to encourage high schoolers to consider the teaching profession. And so he'll be, I'm certainly in the coming months, be able to share with you the progress we're making on that particular realm. But it does take a lot of effort, given where we are right now, from us locally to the state level and on a national level to reverse the trend. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight. So I know that the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit superintendents met with the Secretary of Ed last week. While there are some plans on the table, certainly some of the big lifting will likely occur once there's a new administration in place. With that said, that's a period of time that's unused, and we need something done today. And unfortunately, I don't see that being corrected. So when I talk about the trend going from 5440 to 4,000, there's a high possibility that will happen. And so things will get a little bit more challenging. But I think with the foresight from the board and your commitment to our community and public education, I think we're on the best track we can possibly be on to position ourselves for the future. So thank you for all your support. Ms. Drummond?
I have another one, sorry. I thank you for the Act 1 index chart that you provided, and I just did a quick calculation, and over the 5 years that are listed, we're at average 54.4% of the Act 1 index. So we do have that wiggle room in addition to the additional state funding, and other schools have also gotten additional funding from Pennsylvania, so they also might be looking at new metrics for their contracts. So we need to, and that makes it even more of a reason to enact this now to get, who we need to get. And also our teachers are wonderful and deserve this contract.
Thank you, Ms. Drummond. Ms. Purdue?
I do want to say thank you also to the Finance Committee, and I know Mr. Winters and the rest of the team and the administration for bringing this up, because I think based on what we're hearing in the news, it is necessary, and I think it's a necessary step for us to take. One of the things that I wanted to bring up, and hopefully we keep in the forefront or hopefully hear more about it, and I think Ms. Reese mentioned a little bit about it, is this helps us with attracting and retaining our teachers, but there's also more that we can do. So I'm hoping we can hear more about what else we can do, because based on some of the input we received last year and also before, there are things that we can do that is not necessarily monetary or expensive for the district to do. And I would like to hear a little bit more about what are some of the things we are doing and what are some of the things we plan to do. Because when we think about attracting and retaining, there are many things that can be done in that aspect.
I agree with you, and we will have and be presenting those things to the board as well in the future. Ms. Rocco?
Yeah, that's actually something I was going to bring up. So just to piggyback off Samira, that I am a firm believer in that money doesn't fix every problem, and it certainly doesn't retain talent all the time, and it doesn't always attract talent. And I think that money is attractive, and it helps folks become more attracted to an opportunity, but it's not always the thing that will win them over. So and I think that this plan, I thank Paul immensely. I spent a lot of time asking a lot of questions, and the entire finance committee, and I know administration too. I know there was a lot of time and effort that went into this, and I think that our teachers are the folks that are shaping the future of this district. I just want to be mindful that when we do get resignations and we capture the data, and I know Mr. Sergini or Dr. Sergini did capture that data, because I asked for a lot of it and you included some of it on this report, but I want to continue to capture that. And if they're not leaving for 10,000 plus increases and they're leaving for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year or more, I want to dig into what the bigger issue is. And I just want to be mindful that we're still continuing to capture the data of why folks might be leaving. And also, and we can't always get this from candidates, but why did you turn down our offer and take, X offer? And because I think that's only going to continue to improve us moving forward. That's all.
It's a fair request. Thank you. Mr. McGinnis?
As everyone else said, thank you. I appreciate the time and effort. The only thing I'll say to some of the sentiments about the expense to this, and it does jar you a little bit, Paul, you're right, but if you think it's expensive now, stick around. You combine the one slide of the new certificates with the fact that public teaching is the only labor segment that has seen a outflow for COVID, and none of them have returned, which means they're never coming back. They have other opportunities. They're probably telling everyone how they were a former teacher. They're never coming back. So there's a serious compounding effect of those two factors. And all through COVID, many people took that podium and said how we owe our teachers. And this isn't a reward. This is something that is very strategic. And unfortunately, and I think what Paul was hitting on is this is only going to widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And if you're not a have right now or making significant progress to being a have, the expense of being a have-not potentially could be insurmountable. So, and again, I'm preaching to the choir. You are all in public education. You play this out a couple, 3-4 cycles, and the future gets pretty scary and expensive. So I'm in favor of this. A little bit of what Liz mentioned on the Audubon. Or is this going to be online? And if yes, can we have a reduced version of it? What's the why? What's the how? I think shorter and sweeter, because there is going to be some sticker shock. There is going to be some what's going to happen here? But I would lay out the why pretty clearly to the taxpayers, because if we're losing 5 teachers a year right now, play it out, and candidly, I'm agnostic because I'm the only one here that doesn't have children in the district, and I'm frightened. If I were someone that had a kindergarten, first, second grader, this price tag gets really expensive in about 5 or 6 years. So I am completely in favor of this, and I appreciate all the efforts from Paul to the administration to Shay. I think it's not only the right thing to do, but it is strategically appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. McGinnis. Any other comments from members of the board on the collective bargaining agreement amendment? Seeing no other comments, I want to go on to the last item for under guests and scheduled speakers. And while I had originally planned to have a presentation here, and you can take the presentation down, please. I don't have one for this evening. I just want to read off what I shared in an email earlier this evening. At the October Property Committee meeting, I presented a 19-slide presentation outlining more than a 3-year-old discussion of the planned high school HVAC project. The matter before the committee was to determine whether or not we would proceed forward with the original or modified scope of work that would incur additional engineering fees of between $25,000 to $144,000 respectively to get the documents properly prepared to go out to bid and so forth. Furthermore, I also shared with the committee some high-level strategic plan facility matters that, if packaged along with the HVAC project, could allow us to make a greater impact while leveraging the economy of scales to maximize our return on investments. But since that meeting where I presented an original HVAC project projected to come in at somewhere around $12.7 million, or a modified project projected to come in around $17.2 million, a second review by our owner's rep firm confirmed that today that the cost of either the base or the modified project are going to be much, much higher. For example, the modified project could be in the range of $42 million. So what I'm being told right now, based on on many of the challenges of getting supplies, materials, and just the rising cost, and also the cost of getting access to money is also going up. So what I'm recommending right now is the board giving me an opportunity to bring together my construction team to come up with another alternative consideration for what we should or shouldn't do, that I can be more prepared with numbers, because it's not like it's 17 million or 19 million. It's almost 3 times as much, and that tells me there's a problem. And so I want to make sure that we're wise to where we are. We know that we have a facilities assessment taking place right now, and likely taking 1 month pause to come back to you and giving you some more detailed information about where we should go is probably without a doubt the right approach. So if there's no objection to that, we're just going to put this on pause for 1 month, hopefully come back with some more information, because those numbers in my opinion mean we need to think differently. So with that said, are there any questions on the high school HVAC project, Ms. Reese?
I will just share with those who aren't on the property committee. That property meeting this month is probably the first time I left a committee meeting with not a panic attack. I've never had one, but if I had the beginning of my first ever panic attack at a month shy of 50 years old. It was a tough meeting because all along our next plan was MEP at the high school. And to hear that MEP at the high school may turn into this, which it may be needed, was really tough. I don't think I slept that night. So I say that just to let you know, I appreciate the pause is needed because this is major and to be prepared. And the property committee asked that the board be part of this because this is big and this is needed. My one question is, we had a plan and we did not, I've heard in the public that we chose Arrowhead over the high school. We did not choose Arrowhead over the high school. It was just that, you had a school without sprinklers, there was a big difference. But we were supposed to start this summer on improvements at the high school. And I realized things happen. So no matter what you bring us in November, if we could be conscious of that. And I don't ask that, to Drew's point about him not having children in the district anymore. Having said that, I do have 3 children at the high school, and they won't be there to reap the benefits of a new high school or a new and improved high school. That is not why I'm asking. It's just that that was next on the list. So I say that for 2 reasons. One, we know we're going to have a big price tag at that high school no matter what we decide to do. And 2, whatever happens whatever information you gather in these next 30 days, we do have to keep in mind a timeline because there are issues that need to be addressed. And I know we need to do them economically, and I know we need to do them smartly and efficiently, but we also have to do them. So I will just say that because, we were going along so well, like I really feel like our facility plan really has gone well. It's had bumps because it's expensive. It involves children in school 10 months out of the year, so you can't have all the time and all the money you need. But I will say that was probably the hardest committee meeting in 7 years, hearing that. So anyway, I share that with everyone because this is going to be something you're going to be hearing about for months and months because that's how Arrowhead was. And this is as big as that, I would say. So correct me if I'm misspeaking, but
No. There's a number of factors that determine, how we layered projects out, the amount of money that we wanted to borrow, the run rate for putting things into the budget, the priority based on the severity of the matter. So it's really not as easy to say, well, we put the high school on the back burner. In the simplest terms, the answer is yes, we did do that. But in the actual decision making process, it wasn't, well, high school isn't important as these other places. There were other factors. The challenge right now isn't necessarily about a timeline getting to the summer with a project. The challenge is really, would you want to pay 3 times as much for a project if you want to keep the timeline? And that's the part that concerns me. And I don't think I can recommend that right now. So it's a matter of, should we be, staying on the timeline, which I agree, we need to do something at the high school. But the idea is it a rush to the timeline, or is it a thoughtful exercise in making sure that we time this to the best of our ability? The inflationary thing, took off rather fast. It's going to take some time for us to figure out where it's going to land. And I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you that, the cost of borrowing has doubled. The cost of this project, the base project for HVAC alone, is almost triple. So I don't even know how we can, put our heads around that right now. We were almost spending as much for the HVAC project at the high school, just the base project, as we did to put a whole school in at Arrowhead. So, that's a huge undertaking, and it's clearly needed, as Ms. Reese has said, because we need to have better climate control. But if we're going to do this, and maybe we look at the economic indicators and say, hey, maybe this summer's not the right time to do it, just because of what we know at this moment in time. But given the fact that we're going to have this facilities assessment done, given the fact that we're going to meet with our construction team, they may be able to provide us a better set of guidance going forward, so that if it is the will of the board to take on some of the matters inside the strategic plan, to create that STEM lab, the Fab Lab Academy, to fix the HVAC, to do a number of these other things that we have laid out, like a health and wellness center, create the better classroom atmosphere for our teachers, and that actually came up from our our wellness conversations this past year. I mean, doing those things actually have a direct visual benefit. So we know that we made an investment. We had 2 years or 2.5 years of disruption as part of a construction project, and we can see the result of that. But if you put $42 million into an HVAC project for the month of probably late August, September, and maybe October on some odd years, and then maybe in April and May, you'll be able to utilize that resource on a regular basis in that building. Is it needed? Yes. I'm not going to question it, but you're not going to see that, and it's not going to be as prominent as being able to, not only make that investment, but to address some of the matters that we have laid out in the strategic plan. So with that said, I think it's really important for us to be wise about how we proceed forward. The timeline is an important factor, as Ms. Reese has said, but we don't want to stick to the timeline regardless of the cost, because I think we need to consider all the factors as part of this. So with that said, are there any other questions on this HVAC project? My goal is to come back to obviously the property committee, fill you folks in, and then come back to the board if we have something of substance that we can provide for you. Seeing no other questions, thank you. And that ends guest and scheduled speakers for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. Next week, we will have our reports. And next up is fiscal items. Mr. Bricker.
Thank you, Madam President. This month, for the board's approval, we have the list of bills, treasury report, budgetary transfers as requested by departments and buildings, as well as the motion to complete changes in accordance with the PDE chart of accounts. Once these changes are completed, a report will be provided to the Finance Committee for review. And finally, a change order for Arrowhead in the amount of $1,558.26 for an electric door strike and power supply.
Are there any questions from members of the board for any of the finance items? Seeing no questions, we go on to personnel items. Dr. Serginia.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. Before I do my monthly personnel items, I would like to provide the board with some brief updates on our substitute situation. I'm happy to report that the changes that we've made over the last year or so with the approval of the board has made a substantial difference in our substitute situation. Utilizing our data and our fill rates, probably the most poignant item is looking at our September data, the only full month so far for which we have actual data. In September of 2021, last year, our fill rate was 74%. Looking at our fill rate this year with the adjustments that we've made, we were at 92%. So you can see an 18% increase in the number of vacancies that we were able to fill. I'm also happy to report that with regard to building substitutes, by the end of this month, we will have 2 each at Arrowhead, Woodland, Skyview, and Arcola. Eagleville and Worcester have a full complement of 3 each, and the high school has 4. So we've made substantial gains there as well. And with the start of the school year, we had several additional retirees from last year sign up with STS, and they've been coming back into our classrooms on a fairly regular basis. So we have very good news to report with regard to substitutes, and we're grateful to all of our substitutes and look forward to continuing in that positive direction. So moving on to personnel items. This month, we have 2 resignations classified. We have Colleen Derfler, paraprofessional at Arcola, and Andrea Mites, personal care assistant at Worcester. We thank Colleen and Andrea for their service to the students of Methacton, and we wish them well. We have 1 change of status, Kelly Alexander, which is professional. Kelly Alexander from staff nurse to certified school nurse at Eagleville. As many of you know, Kelly's already been part of our family for many years, first as a substitute and now as a staff nurse. So we're very happy to welcome her officially to Eagleville, and we look forward to the many years that will come of her taking care of the students of Eagleville. We have multiple supplemental contracts for IEP writing, homebound instruction, bus duty, room movement, our winter sports season athletic coaches, activity sponsors, and mentors for some of our recent additions. We have two additions to the classified substitute list, Joanne DeLeo and Frank Rittenhouse. We're grateful to welcome Joanne and Frank. And we have additions to the list of district-approved volunteers. Thank you.
Are there any questions from members of the board to my right for Dr. Sergini? Seeing none, to my left, Ms. Reese?
Just a quick question, and it kind of goes with what Ms. Purdue and Ms. Bracco were saying about what we're doing for our teachers. I would ask you, I feel like the substitute fill rate is helpful to our teachers and a bonus to them. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. It makes a big difference. Continuity of instruction is great for our students and for our staff alike.
I mean, I would just think that takes a load off their shoulders to know that their colleagues are maybe not covering as much if they're going to be out, and that they know having a substitute in there all day long is
Absolutely.
very helpful. I know I've been out 1.5 days this school year, and both times I had a sub, and it made a substitute, excuse me. It made a world of difference to
Absolutely.
know that I
Both
had a
with our,
substitute.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean
Yeah.
to interrupt.
No.
Both with our daily substitutes, many of whom are repeat individuals who come on a fairly frequent basis, as well as our building substitutes, who are individuals that our teachers and our students get to know because they're in our buildings every day. And that makes a tremendous positive impact.
Yeah, if I could say, Ms. Reese, one of the key elements to all of this is that it gives the regular teacher the peace of mind necessary to know that they've taken off and their children are going to be well cared for and educated while they're off. Because there are a number of times when we're in these shortages that they take it upon themselves to stay in the classroom and because of their commitment to the student body. So it is that mental health part of it, all of it, that is also is at play here. So when the work that this board has done and the work that Dr. Sergini has done has really helped that mental health part of it. Any other questions on members of the board for personnel items? Seeing none. Thank you, Dr. Sergini. And Dr. Walsh, curriculum items.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. Good evening, everyone. For next week, I'll be seeking approval of the following revised curriculum for the 22-23 school year: ELA grade 4 and practical arts grades 10 to 12 TV commercials and news reporting for the second semester. And the board of directors has already been provided full and complete documents for your review. Thank you.
Other questions for Dr. Walsh? Not seeing any questions. Thank you, Dr. Walsh. Next item, we have policy. Mr. Regina.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. For the items on the board agenda, we have 5 items for policy. Of those items, the only one of substantial nature that has any changes is the new one for threat assessment. Threat assessment does also apply a lot of the Act 55 guidelines that have been issued by the state with respect to training and the requirements for training of both any of the member on the threat assessment teams, as well as the director of safety and security for the district. Besides that, there's no other changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Regina. Any questions on policy from members of the board? Seeing no questions, we go on to other. We got Board of Director resignation. Approve the resignation of School Board Director Greg Young effective October 25th, 2022. Please know that I don't know if it was Thursday or Friday of last week. We did post out onto the website the process and the procedures for which members of the Methacton community can become appointed members of the school board to fill this vacancy. Again, that vacancy will be filled till December 2023, and then there'll be a 2-year position open in the normal electoral process. With that said, there are gifts and donations as listed for the Methacton Education Foundation gift to the backpack program for $10,000. We also have another gift for backpack donations for $471.39 from individuals listed in the attached document. On 13C under trips, please notice that Myrtle Beach is in South Carolina. We'll correct that. but there's a trip for the Ripken Baseball Classic in Myrtle Beach on March 16th to the 21st, 2023. Under transportation, as we've been listing, the drivers as listed there. And then 13E has the amendment of the collective bargaining agreement, and you will have the presentation from this evening with that modification on that step movement posted to this agenda, and then also posted to the board area of the board website. With that said, I'll turn the meeting over to Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. Then we have dates for board members' calendars. Please note November 2nd, there's a special meeting here for the purpose of appointing a new school board director. The rest of the dates are as follows. And then we have now old or new business. Does anyone have anything for old or new business? Ms. Reese?
I just have one question as a clarification for 13A. So does that mean whoever we appoint on November 2nd goes until December 23rd, is appointed till December 23rd? Or whenever, like, my term is up, December 23rd? Okay, so then does that mean,
No,
No.
it's not December 23rd. It's
I'm just,
23.
23 is what
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
mean.
It's actually, it ends the first Monday of December.
Okay, sorry. So December of 23, correct, sorry. And then, so then that means there will be 6 school board seats open.
There will be 5
5
four-year
4-year.
terms and 1 2-year term.
Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else for old or new business down here? None? Okay. It is time for courtesy of the floor, where we provide an opportunity for residents to make comments on matters that are or may be before the board. The board asks that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. The Board of School Directors may choose to respond to matters following the conclusion of the comments. Please submit questions via email to information@methacton.org. Anyone for courtesy of the floor?
Good evening. Brian Earnshaw, Lower Providence. Just a point of clarification, rather Arrowhead, somebody can confirm my math on this. The latest enrollment report shows 426 students at Arrowhead with a building capacity of 625. So I calculate a 68% utilization of that building that was just opened. So if somebody could confirm that for me, that I'm looking at that correctly, I would appreciate it. A question regarding the financial statements. It appears that interest income on the revenue reports are running favorable to budget. I wonder if Mr. Bricker could maybe comment on that. What's driving that? Again, why is it so favorable to budget already a couple months into the year? And then regarding the MEA contract amendment, there was discussion about how this year's cost was going to be funded. And if I heard it correctly, it was about 1.5 million. About half of it's coming from the money from the state, about 750,000. And then the board president asked a question about the balance. It sounded like it was coming from the Shenandoah money that no longer is to be put into escrow. Did I hear that correctly? Okay, the board president is nodding yes. My understanding, I went back and looked at the presentation in the budget from April 13th of 2022. It's a slide titled collection rate. And this indicates to me that, well, first the discussion says, and I'll read it verbatim, I'll quote, Shenandoah's taxes that were paid in protest were not included in the actual tax collected, as the funds were placed in escrow and therefore not available for use. Adjustment to the collection rate is the next title, and I'll quote, the past 3 years' taxes paid in protest were added to the actual collections, providing adjusted collections. That means, it indicates to me that the budget already was adjusted to take out the fact that the Shenandoah funds would no longer go in escrow. So my question is, how do you use money to cover half of the increase in the cost of the MEA contract, budgeted funds that aren't there? Any thoughts? So you can't offset a cost with budgeted funds that aren't in the budget. So one or two things are missing here. One, the budget presentation was misleading, or how this MEA contract amendment is going to be funded is misleading. One of those is the right answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for courtesy of the floor? Well, seeing none. Any other comments from board members before we wrap up? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Well, yeah,
sorry.
I think I want to make one
You want to
clarification.
make, okay, thank you.
On the payment of the collective bargaining agreement. You'll see this when it's posted to the site, but I specifically listed, I just want to get to the page to read it. So for year one of the 4-year agreement, I specifically listed the following items. Any budgetary surplus from the 22-23 school year. The next item was the $800,000 from the state subsidy increase, which was not factored in as part of the revenue in the annual budget. The next item is we had $700,000 in transfer to capital line item. If we need to use that to pay for this, for that, we don't need to make that transfer. We transfer and use it for salaries. The next item is, as you all are aware, we have a $200,000 budgetary reserve line item that also can be transferred to salaries. And then likely due to the fact that there are what are called attritional savings for salary and benefits, that means that we budget from, say, July 1 through June 30th for a position as an aide, as a teacher, whatever, and we don't get them until October 1. There are differentials between the time they start and what we actually budgeted for. So that's commonly referred to as attritional savings based on those pieces. So all those things combined are what we're going to use to fund that first year. What I believe, what I understood when you asked the question, Madam President, about the 800,000 from Shannondale, is that now can be used for supporting the budget, which in turn supplies the resources for paying for, the current salaries, the future salaries, whatever it may be. It's just something we haven't had before. So I'm not saying that we're using the Shannondale dollars to pay for this particular one this year, because it wasn't factored in, as the man at the podium so indicated.
Thank you. Any other final comments from board members or anybody? Okay, motion to adjourn. Mr. McGinnis, can I get a second? Ms. Cancro? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
I just want to